Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! As he gazed upon the sprawling city skyline, Philip Hayes couldn't shake the familiar longing that tugged at his heart every time he looked at that corner office. It had been his beacon of hope for the past 5 years, a constant reminder of his unfulfilled aspirations. Philip's dedication knew no bounds. Each quarter, he produced reports brimming with creativity and strategy that far exceeded expectations. Countless nights he sacrificed, striving for that prestigious title. Senior Director of Marketing. With a heavy heart, he approached his perennial pilgrimage to that vacant office. The freshly painted walls, a taunting sign of new beginnings, mocked him as he imagined yet another stranger claiming the coveted title. Feeling the weight of unrewarded commitment, he veered from his usual path to his cramped cubicle. Heard his presentation was solid. Yeah, but you know how it goes. Davis plays golf with Michaels every Sunday. The bathroom door swung closed behind them, leaving Philip alone with the echo of their words and his reflection. Davis's presentation had been a watered-down version of his own strategy, delivered with confident swagger and punctuated with sports metaphors that had the senior partners nodding along like bobbleheads. Back at his desk, he opened the company-wide email announcing Eric Davis as the newest Senior Director of Marketing. The corner office would soon have his name on the door. The same Eric Davis who had asked Philip how to create a pivot table last month. Tough break, whispered Amelia from the neighboring cubicle. Her sympathetic smile only made it worse. Your campaign ideas were better. Thanks, he muttered, turning back to his screen. The afternoon crawled by in a fog of spreadsheets and unanswered emails. At 5:30, most of the office had cleared out, but Philip remained, staring at an article that had popped up in his news feed. Gender Bias in Corporate America, the Invisible Ceiling. The article cited a study where identical resumes were submitted with male and female names. The male candidates were consistently rated as more competent and offered higher starting salaries. Another study mentioned how women's ideas were overlooked in meetings, only to be praised when repeated by male colleagues. His mind drifted to the marketing convention coming up in Chicago next month. Corvus Enterprises would send representatives from various departments to network with potential clients and showcase their latest campaigns. As a mid-level marketing manager, Philip had been assigned to attend, though he suspected it was more about having someone to man the company booth than any real opportunity for advancement. An idea began to form, ridiculous at first, then increasingly compelling as the empty office around him grew darker with the setting sun. What if he didn't go as Philip Hayes? The apartment was quiet when he arrived home, save for the soft purring of his cat, Mozart, who rubbed against his legs as he opened his laptop. For hours, he researched, jumping from voice training tutorials to makeup techniques to women's professional attire. The more he read, the more the outlandish idea crystallized into something that felt like a genuine social experiment. Would his ideas be received differently if they came from a woman? Could he prove what he'd long suspected, that the playing field wasn't level? The weeks leading up to the convention became a crash course in femininity. He ordered clothes online, conservative pieces that wouldn't draw undue attention, a gray pencil skirt, a white silk blouse, a black blazer, and low heels in his size. He practiced walking in them late at night when the neighbors wouldn't hear the uneven clicking across his hardwood floors. Voice training apps helped him find a register that sounded natural while still being distinctly feminine. Hours spent in front of the bathroom mirror with makeup tutorials playing on his phone resulted in countless mistakes, removed with cotton pads and started again until the techniques began to feel familiar. A blonde wig with shoulder-length hair arrived in a discreet package. The first time he put it on, adjusting it carefully as instructed by the YouTube tutorial, he barely recognized himself. There was something in the softening of his jawline with contouring makeup and the frame of blonde hair that transformed his appearance entirely.
Evelyn,
he said to his reflection, testing the name he'd chosen, his grandmother's name, dignified and professional. His voice still needed work, but it was getting there. The night before flying to Chicago, he packed 2 sets of luggage. 1 suitcase contained Philip's clothes, 3 business suits, dress shirts, ties, and leather Oxfords. The second contained Evelyn's wardrobe, the blazer, skirt, and blouse for the first day, along with 2 modest dresses for the subsequent days of the convention. Makeup, the wig, and other essentials were carefully tucked into a separate compartment. On the flight to Chicago, his heart raced with equal parts anxiety and anticipation. Was he really going to go through with this? The plan was to attend the first day as Philip, establish his presence, then switch to Evelyn for the remainder of the convention. He would claim Philip had been called back for an emergency and that Evelyn was sent as a replacement from another branch. But as the plane touched down and he checked into his hotel room, the thought of switching back and forth seemed unnecessarily complicated. The convention would last 3 days. What if he simply attended as Evelyn from the start? Standing in front of the hotel mirror the next morning, he made the decision. The gray pencil skirt fit perfectly. The white silk blouse was crisp and professional, and the black blazer added the right amount of authority. The low heels were uncomfortable but manageable. His legs, thankfully never particularly hairy, had been carefully shaved the night before. The wig sat naturally after careful adjustment, the blonde strands framing his face in a way that softened his features. With makeup applied according to the techniques he'd practiced, foundation, subtle contouring, mascara, and a neutral lipstick, the transformation was complete.
Good morning,
he said, practicing Evelyn's voice one more time. I'm Evelyn Hayes from Corvus Enterprises. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed his purse and convention badge, which he'd registered under Evelyn's name weeks ago, and headed for the door. The convention center bustled with marketing professionals from across the country. Evelyn now, navigated through the crowds with cautious steps, hyper-aware of every movement. To her surprise, no one gave her a second glance beyond the occasional polite smile or nod. She was just another professional woman in a sea of convention attendees. At the Corvus booth, she was arranging marketing materials when a familiar voice boomed behind her. You must be the new rep from the East Coast branch. She turned to find Marcus Michaels, the senior VP of marketing, and the man who had passed her over for promotion time and again, extending his hand. Evelyn Hayes, she said, voice steady despite her racing heart. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Michaels.
Please call me Marcus,
he insisted, his smile broader than any Philip had ever received. Philip was supposed to be here, but I suppose something came up. Typical. The casual dismissal stung, but Evelyn maintained her professional smile. I'm happy to step in. I've been following the Henderson campaign closely and have some thoughts on expanding its reach. Marcus's eyebrows rose slightly.
Is that so? I'd love to hear them over coffee. The first panel doesn't start for another hour.
Never in 5 years had Marcus Michaels invited Philip for coffee to discuss ideas. Over the next 3 days, Evelyn presented the same strategies and campaign concepts that Philip had been pitching for months, but the reception couldn't have been more different. Where Philip's ideas had been met with non-committal nods or outright skepticism, Evelyn's were greeted with enthusiastic approval. That's brilliant, Marcus said after she outlined a digital marketing approach for their newest client. Fresh perspective is exactly what we need. Davis has been pushing the same tired ideas for months. The same ideas Philip had authored and Davis had co-opted. During a roundtable discussion on market trends, Evelyn spoke up about the potential of micro-targeted social media campaigns, an approach Philip had championed at 3 different meetings to lukewarm response. This time, several senior executives were taking notes and asking follow-up questions. By the convention's final day, Evelyn had been invited to dinner with the executive team, collected business cards from potential clients who were impressed with her insights, and been praised repeatedly for her innovative thinking. When Eric Davis himself approached the booth, there was a moment of panic. Surely Davis, who worked with Philip daily, would recognize him, but Davis merely introduced himself with the same confident handshake he offered everyone, his eyes never registering a hint of recognition. "Evelyn Hayes, East Coast Branch," she said, waiting for the moment of realization. It never came. Instead, Davis launched into a self-congratulatory monologue about his recent promotion, interspersed with condescending explanations of marketing basics that Evelyn, could have taught a course on. "That's fascinating," she said when he finally paused for breath. "Though I found that approach doesn't resonate with millennial consumers. The data suggests they respond better to authenticity than traditional sales tactics." Davis's smile faltered.
Well, every market is different, I suppose.
"Of course," she agreed pleasantly. "The quarterly reports broken down by demographic clearly show the trend, though. I'd be happy to send you my analysis." As Davis excused himself shortly after, Evelyn felt a rush of satisfaction that quickly gave way to a more complicated emotion. The experiment had proven what she suspected. Her ideas were sound, her strategies solid. The only variable that had changed was her perceived gender. But there was something else, something unexpected. Throughout the convention, she had grown increasingly comfortable in Evelyn's skin. The careful movements, the voice modulation, the professional feminine attire. What had started as a conscious performance had begun to feel natural. There was an authenticity to Evelyn that Philip had never quite managed to achieve in his navy suits and corporate haircut. On the flight back home, still dressed as Evelyn in a navy blue dress with her blonde hair neatly styled, she contemplated the choice before her. The experiment was over. She had proven her point to herself, if to no one else. But the thought of returning to Philip's life, to being overlooked and underestimated, felt increasingly wrong. In her hotel room before the flight, she had carefully packed away Philip's untouched business suits, folding them into the suitcase that now sat in the overhead compartment. The moment had felt symbolic, like closing a chapter. The apartment was exactly as she had left it, Mozart greeting her with the same enthusiastic purrs. But as she set down her luggage and looked around at Philip's sparse decor and functional furnishings, she knew a decision had been made somewhere between Chicago and home. Monday morning arrived with the familiar knot of anxiety that accompanied the start of the work week, but today it was intertwined with something else. Determination. Evelyn selected a burgundy blazer she had ordered online and rush-delivered after the convention, pairing it with a cream blouse and black trousers. The blonde hair was styled simply but elegantly, and her makeup was applied with the confidence of recent practice. The office elevator felt like a stage, each ding of a passing floor increasing her pulse. When the doors finally opened to the marketing department, she stepped out with measured strides, eyes forward, braced for the reaction. "Can I help you?" The receptionist's polite inquiry was the first hurdle. "I'm here to see Marcus Michaels." Evelyn replied, her voice steady. Evelyn Hayes. We met at the Chicago convention. Recognition dawned on the receptionist's face. Oh, yes. He mentioned you might be stopping by. I'll let him know you're here. Within minutes, Marcus emerged from the corner office, the one Philip had coveted for years, with a broad smile.
Evelyn, wonderful to see you again. Come in, come in.
As they settled into his office, Evelyn placed a folder on his desk.
I've compiled the market analysis we discussed, along with implementation strategies for the next quarter.
Marcus leafed through the documents, nodding appreciatively.
Impressive work. You know, we've been looking to strengthen our East Coast team, but perhaps there's an opportunity here instead.
The conversation that followed was surreal. Marcus outlined a new position, Associate Director of Digital Strategy, reporting directly to him with a salary that exceeded what Philip had been making by a considerable margin.
Of course, we'd need to discuss relocation from the East Coast,
Marcus added.
But I think you'd be a valuable addition to our team.
Actually, Evelyn said carefully, relocation won't be necessary. I'm already based here. Marcus looked confused. But I thought the East Coast branch. There was a misunderstanding at the convention, she explained, heart pounding. I'm not from the East Coast branch. I've been working in this office for 5 years, though not as Evelyn. The confusion on Marcus's face deepened. I'm Philip Hayes, she said finally. Or I was. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. Marcus's expression cycled through confusion, disbelief, and finally something resembling understanding.
This is unexpected,
he managed finally. I understand if the job offer is no longer on the table, Evelyn said, rising to leave. But I wanted to be honest about who I am, who I'm becoming. Marcus held up a hand. Wait, this is a lot to process, but the work you presented at the convention, the strategies you outlined, those were genuinely impressive. That hasn't changed. He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. I owe you an apology, it seems. If your ideas weren't being heard before. They weren't, Evelyn confirmed. The digital strategy I presented in Chicago? I proposed the same approach in the Henderson account meeting 3 months ago. It was dismissed as too experimental. Davis presented a diluted version 2 weeks later and was praised for his innovation. Another uncomfortable silence fell between them.
I need some time to think about this,
Marcus said finally.
But I meant what I said about your work. Whether as Philip or Evelyn, the quality speaks for itself. I'd like you to come back tomorrow to discuss next steps.
The walk back to her cubicle felt like running a gauntlet. Every eye in the office seemingly fixed on her. Amelia's jaw literally dropped as Evelyn settled into Philip's chair and logged into his computer. Philip? She whispered incredulously. Evelyn now, she corrected gently. It's a long story. Word spread through the office with predictable speed. Some colleagues avoided her completely, clearly uncomfortable. Others approached with cautious curiosity or unexpected support. Davis, upon hearing the news, turned an interesting shade of crimson and made himself scarce for the remainder of the day. The following morning, dressed in a forest green dress that complemented her blonde hair, Evelyn was called back to Marcus's office. She had spent the night preparing for the worst, termination perhaps, or at best a request to maintain Philip's appearance in the workplace. Instead, Marcus presented her with a modified offer.
The position stands,
he said, sliding a contract across the desk.
Associate Director of Digital Strategy, reporting to me. We'll need to update your personnel records, of course, but our HR department assures me that can be arranged.
Relief flooded through her. Thank you, Marcus. I appreciate the opportunity.
I've been doing some reflection, he admitted, about how ideas are received in this office depending on who presents them. It's been educational. I hope you'll help us identify other blind spots as we move forward.
The weeks that followed brought both challenges and unexpected victories. The legal process of changing her name from Phillip to Evelyn Hayes began, with the company's HR department providing surprising support throughout the transition. Her wardrobe expanded to include more colorful blazers and elegant dresses appropriate for her new role. The blonde hair, once a wig, gradually became her own as her natural hair grew out and was professionally colored and styled to match. Not everyone was supportive. Davis continued to treat her with barely disguised contempt, and certain clients requested to work with someone else when they learned of her transition. But for each closed door, others opened. Her digital marketing strategies proved successful, generating significant revenue and establishing her credibility beyond question. 6 months after the Chicago convention, Evelyn sat in her new office, not the corner office, but a significant upgrade from the cubicle, with a window overlooking the eastern side of the city. Her desk displayed a framed photo of Mozart, a small plant Amelia had given her as an office warming gift, and a nameplate reading Evelyn Hayes, Associate Director of Digital Strategy. A knock at her door interrupted her review of the quarterly projections. "Got a minute?" Marcus asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Of course," she said, gesturing to the chair opposite her desk. "The Henderson account is expanding their marketing budget for next year," he informed her. "They were particularly impressed with the social media campaign you developed. They've requested you specifically to lead the expanded initiative." The same Henderson account that had gone to Davis after Philip's ideas were dismissed. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. "I'd be happy to take it on," she replied. Marcus nodded, then hesitated before adding, "The senior team is discussing the creation of a new position, Director of Innovative Marketing Solutions. Your name is at the top of the list." The corner office. At last. "I appreciate the consideration," Evelyn said, maintaining her professional composure despite the surge of validation she felt. "I'll put together some preliminary thoughts on the expanded Henderson campaign by the end of the week." After Marcus left, she turned to the window, watching the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the city. The reflection that looked back at her from the glass was poised, confident, and unmistakably feminine. The blonde hair catching the golden light, the burgundy blazer complementing her complexion. Evelyn Hayes, ascending the corporate ladder not because she had changed who she was at her core, but because she had finally found the courage to be authentic. What had begun as an experiment in gender bias had evolved into a journey of self-discovery. The insights she had gained about corporate culture remained valuable, and she was determined to use her position to advocate for all voices to be heard equally. But the most profound discovery had been personal. The recognition that Evelyn wasn't a disguise or a social experiment. She was the person Philip had always been meant to become. The following Monday, a company-wide email announced the promotion of Evelyn Hayes to Director of Innovative Marketing Solutions, effective immediately. The corner office that had remained tantalizingly out of reach for so long would finally bear her name. As she packed up her belongings from the smaller office, preparing for the move, Amelia appeared in the doorway with a small gift bag. "Congratulations," she said, handing it over. "You earned this. As Philip, as Evelyn, as yourself, however you identify, your brilliance deserves recognition." Inside the bag was an elegant pen holder for her new desk, engraved with a simple message. "Your voice matters." Evelyn placed the gift carefully in the box with her other belongings, touched by the gesture. Thank you, Amelia. That means more than you know. Later that afternoon, she stood in the corner office, her office now, arranging her possessions on the desk that faced the panoramic view of the city skyline. The nameplate reading, Evelyn Hayes, Director of Innovative Marketing Solutions, took center place, alongside Mozart's photo and Amelia's gift. As the sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. What had started as a desperate attempt to prove workplace gender bias had evolved into a profound personal transformation. The experiment had succeeded in ways she never anticipated, revealing not just the biases of corporate culture, but also the truth of her own identity. Evelyn Hayes smoothed down her emerald green dress, adjusted a strand of her blonde hair, and turned from the window to face her new domain. The path forward was clear now: continue to excel, mentor others who felt silenced, and advocate for a workplace where ideas were evaluated on merit rather than packaging. The experiment was over. Her life, her real life, was just beginning.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!